enemy. Think that it was meant to be. Living in a time where disease is on every screen. I won't let them fester me. I know most are festering.
He's into it super
Negativity.
smooth. But if that was me with a Supra as well, I mean, geez, man,
Right.
if it wasn't taken away from me, most likely I would have definitely gotten in trouble. I feel like when you're young, you have a powerful car, you're just gonna be all kinds of crazy, you know.
Sure.
Well, I want to say thank you for coming on, man. I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this since the initial message here. And guys, I just want to introduce Kevin here. Okay, so Kevin Kinzer, it's I'm just hyped because I'm like, his background is with suppressors, correct? You sell all like NFA type items. You came
Yes.
from the military background experience, and when I was watching your videos, you're shooting all these fully automatic guns. I'm like, man, this is the guy I just want to be around because it's fucking awesome, right? And it's great. But if you want to elaborate more on that and your where you come from, your background, open floor,
Yeah, of
man,
course.
please.
So suppressors is a fairly new thing. I've only been doing this maybe 3 or 4 years,
Mhm.
right? But it's like dog years when you work 20 hours a day. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Um, I grew up in Indiana, in northern Indiana, and I joined the military at 17,
Mhm.
and I'm still enlisted actually in the Army National Guard.
Oh wow!
And
Thanks for your
so,
service.
yeah, I've been in for almost 20 years now.
Oh, that's a long time, man. That's commitment right there.
Yeah, yeah. And with the military, I do IT work, right? I
Mhm.
do telecommunications and IT and infrastructure and satellite work and stuff like that.
Mhm, mhm.
And so that's pretty cool. And a lot of my past career, I've been doing systems engineering and telecommunications and IT infrastructure work, right?
Mhm.
Like data cabling and Cisco iOS configuration stuff, right? A lot of nerd stuff.
Does that any of that have to do with the cyberspace? Because I don't know much about the AT space,
It
but
does. It does. And that's why I moved to Georgia,
yeah.
right? I moved down to Augusta, Georgia about 6 or 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm. That's got to be intense because I know with cybersecurity nowadays, there's so many threats out there. I can only imagine when it comes to the degree of the government. I mean, I worked for an accounting firm prior to running on with this, and the threats that we were notified of that can potentially happen were terrifying. But to the degree of like the federal level, government level, it's got to be, I mean, 10x easily from what we face.
Right. Sure.
Yeah, that's all. That's intense, man. So, do you work with the cybersecurity space too, or just
I
like you just
do.
mentioned?
I do. I have a master's in cybersecurity.
Oh man, you know what's crazy, man? I've been wanting to talk to someone about cybersecurity because, again, it's like it's a growing threat, right? It's something that's from what I've seen, is just like you can not only from like private information that can be exposed and sold in the dark web, but even to the degree of a power grid, our power grid being exposed through cybersecurity. Is that really the case?
Um, I think so. I think so. I think a lot of things are, computer controlled. I mean, you
Mhm.
saw Die Hard, right? What is
Oh
that? Live
yeah.
Free or Die
Oh
Hard? Well, there you
yeah.
go. I mean, gosh, take down a couple things all at the same time, and the whole system could collapse.
It's intense, man. I was watching.
Yeah.
I don't know if you watch Sean Ryan. It's a channel that's on YouTube. This guy, he does like, I think, world class interviews with all these other people who work in like these insane departments, right? And he
Right.
just recently did a video where they're talking about the power grid, and it just relates to what you were saying. It's like, just shut down a few things. Once you shut down those few things, it's all over. All of it's
Sure.
done. Pretty terrifying, man. To be quite
Yeah.
honest.
Well, a lot of the work that I do, right? I
Mm,
do a lot of telecommunications work still, and a lot of it is like the single entry to the actual internet. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Like I could go in there with a set of, snips and shut off the whole internet for the entire Wells Fargo branch or whatever,
Mm,
whatever.
Jesus.
And so a lot of it's very critical. You know what I mean? I say most
Yeah.
often that some of the contract work that I do, they'll pay me like $1 to plug in a cable, and then like $100 to know which cable to plug into where.
Hmm,
You
hmm,
know,
hmm.
and so it's interesting stuff. I mean, I still do some IT contract work, right? Um, it essentially started with car stereos,
Oh,
right?
really? Wait,
Yeah,
so you were in what,
years
installing car stereos?
years ago. I was
Oh,
16
wow.
years old,
How
right?
how how
15,
did that happen?
16,
Yeah.
17 years old, and I really got into it. And I was like, I got to the point where I was installing them for people when we were swapping from cassette tapes to CD players,
Mhm,
right? And getting like the auxiliary headphone jack for your Creative Zune and the original iPods,
mhm.
right? That's how long ago it was.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man, I haven't Bluetooth just changed everything. Just sit in your
Yeah.
car and boom, there you go, right?
Yeah, this was definitely pre-Bluetooth. This was pre cell phone.
It's all cassette. You know, I was thinking about the other day. Actually, funny enough, one of my first cars was a Honda Civic, and we're talking about back when you could still put the cassette players in there with the little, yeah, the cassette pieces in there.
With the
And
wire
yeah, man, you
down to
pull out
your
the wire
CD
and you play.
player.
That's exactly it. It's
You
like,
have to hold it.
yeah, man,
You
it's
have to hold the
hilarious.
CD player.
It's hilarious because that's what we used to utilize back then, and now it's just so simple. And I'm grateful it's more simple now because I remember the last time I actually used that cassette player. We were still, it was me and a friend, and this is down in Miami. We're driving, and I'm like, something smells like smoke. What's going on? And we look at the radio in the cassette player section, and it starts blowing out smoke. We're like, oh, it's a whole ordeal stuff.
Wow.
So definitely grateful for Bluetooth nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, but that was essentially one of my first jobs was
Yeah.
installing car stereos for people, and I got all of the different tools and adapters and components that I needed. And the first couple of them I did for cost. I did for
Mm,
what it cost me to replace it. And then I started doing them for like $10, you know. And I kind of got into soldering with that too,
mhm,
because
mhm.
at the time we were putting like blue light rings, right? Neon lights all over
All the
cars
custom
and
work.
amplifiers and all that stuff. And one time in my personal car, I had these blue LEDs, and I cut into the control box that had like beat with the music, right? And to turn it on and off. I
Mhm.
cut into that, spliced in a couple other lights for the footwells, and then I cut into it again and spliced in a couple other lights, and eventually I overloaded it, right? And it burned one of the resistors on that box.
Mhm.
So I pulled the box apart and I pulled out that resistor and I go into Radio Shack. All right, this is
Damn, I
how
haven't heard
long
that.
ago it was.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man, I haven't heard that name in a long time. Last time I ever heard Radio Shack. Wow, major
and I
throwbacks
walk
here.
into yeah, and I walk into Radio Shack and I'm like, "Hey, I need one of these, but I need it to be bigger."
Yeah.
you know? And so they sold me one, and I took the like a wood burner, right? Because I didn't
Okay.
have an actual soldering iron, and I hit the back of that board with that wood burner, and I slid that little resistor in there, and that
Hmm.
was it. And then boom, I was back up in business,
Wow,
and it ran for years. It ran after I sold that sound system. You know what
wow,
I mean? It was still running.
that's awesome. Talk about creativity because you could have just tossed the whole thing out. But, can't,
Right.
it's not gonna be able to do it. But you made it work. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, how
Because
did that transition into what you're into now?
and
This is
so
such a
that
huge
really
different world.
yeah, that got me really interested in electronics, right? And
Okay.
communications and IT. And then 17, 18 years old, I joined the army. And they're like, "What job do you want to do?" And I'm like, "Well, I want to do something that is going to be worthwhile and going to give me a career
Mm,
outside of the military, you
mm.
know?" If you join the military and you are a artillery guy and the only thing you know is loading artillery shells into giant weapons, then that's all you'd be able to do.
Yeah, you can't
But
really
if you
take
get
that
into
into.
right, but you get into IT, you get Cisco certification and CCNA and Security Plus. You can work with a lot of industry, right? A
Hmm.
lot of other
Hmm.
companies. So that was my thought process. Got into the army in 2005 and have absolutely loved it. I still am enlisted. I still do communications and IT work for them,
Hmm.
and it got me into a lot of the contract work that I do. right? A
Hmm.
lot of independent contracts, like say Steak and Shake right now, their POS terminal goes down. They'll
Okay.
call their corporate office in Austin, Texas, and then those guys will source local talent like me
Hmm.
to say, hey, we need to re-terminate this data jack or check this cabling out. And so then I go there and fix the
Get it done.
problems.
Wow, man. It's crazy with that mindset that you had going into the military was something I want to take with me after, right? Like I've never been in the military, but I've met plenty of people who've come out and they don't have real much experience other than the leadership that they learn there.
Right.
If they don't take up a field like yourself, like let's say IT. My cousin actually, he went into the military with the same mindset, and from last time I spoke to him, what he's doing now, he's working. He went to the Air Force. He's working with
Hmm.
F-22s, like with the repairs, maintenance, and all that. And I'm like, man, that's sick. His thought is because when he gets out the military, he wants to get into become an aircraft technician and continue on that route. So,
Nice.
yeah,
That's
it's pretty
awesome.
cool, man. That's a pretty cool job too, man. Working with F-22s, I'm like, yo, those are some sick crafts.
Yeah, that's very cool. Very
Yes.
cool. And
So now,
so
yeah, go
the
on.
the the transition from like doing IT work, I'm still doing it, right?
Yeah.
But about 3 or 4 years ago, one of my close friends told me about this sales role with
Mhm.
GSL in suppressors. And I'm a pretty big gun guy, right? I do a lot of shooting anyway.
Yeah, I
And
mean you
obviously
got
in
some
the
pretty cool stuff up there.
yeah, 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 a lot of platforms won't let you touch them, I guess. I don't know. Semantics. But yeah, there's let me see if I can go up.
Oh, you got
That
more. Oh, that's nice.
oh,
There you
I got
go. Is
the
that hold
Negan
on?
bat.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, is that a Negan back up
The
there?
Negan bat
Holy
and
crap, dude! I need one of those.
AK-47 and I got the Beretta Tomcat and a Mac 11 and just a couple cool things.
Couple, yeah, just a
Couple cool
couple, right?
things.
Am I don't know if I'm saying the term right, but is that a piece of claymore right there that I see behind
That
you?
is a Claymore.
Oh shit, okay.
It is a
It's just casually
Claymore.
hanging there. That's awesome, dude. That's awesome.
And so, yeah, I mean, I kind of dipped my toe into it, right?
Mhm.
Because it started with me getting two suppressors. I got a 9 mil can and a dedicated 5.56 can,
Mhm.
right? And I freaking loved them. And when I was processing those orders, he said, "Hey, you should really look at a sales role with us." And I was like, "Dude, I don't do sales.
Mhm.
I'm an IT guy. I can freaking build a network,
No,
right?
no, just a
I
little
can
bit.
set up IP addressing, but I cannot I'm not comfortable with sales. I don't know,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because my perception was that sales was manipulation, right?
I
I
feel like
thought that
most
it
of us,
was,
yeah.
yeah, and I had like a negative viewpoint towards it, and I just it's one of those things that if you're not familiar with it, I guess you're
Mhm.
more apprehensive, you know?
Yeah, of
And so
course.
that was my thought process. And then I realized in doing this now, of course, that sales is not about manipulation. It's about presenting data. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And and working in communications, our entire goal is getting data from one location to another, right?
So it works hand to hand in that perspective that you're
Yes.
saying.
And so I
Yeah.
took a lot of things that I do in telecommunications and I leveraged that into this sales role.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
it's fascinating stuff.
Which brings me to questions, right? Because I mean, for majority of the people, even people who are going to listen to this, sales is something that can be very intimidating, for multiple factors. One, it could be because you don't want to manipulate, which is not. If you go into sales for the right reason, you're not manipulating. You're helping people. You're providing something that someone needs, right?
Right.
It can be that. It can be just having to get into a field where you have to initiate conversations and build relationships, and people seem to be very uncomfortable with that. Now, for someone like you who came from IT, transitioned over to the set to sales, and from what I understood, writing your description, top salesman as well, right? Which is awesome. What were some of the mental challenges that you faced with that transition, and how'd you overcome that transition, those challenges you faced?
Well, I like people,
Okay.
right? And I like solving problems. And that's what a lot of sales is doing is solving a problem,
Mm-hmm.
presenting a solution, right? the biggest objection, the biggest hurdles that I've had to really overcome with it is
Mhm.
brand awareness, right? Just
Mhm.
getting in front of somebody, say, here, this is what we have. We build these, we sell these, available. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the most difficult part, is getting in front of the right people, you know?
Mhm.
And I guess I've got a really interesting story. There's a dealer less than 3 miles from my house.
Mhm.
Okay. Really, really big firearms and suppressor dealer. Okay. And when I
Okay.
started this, your natural tendency would be to run straight to that guy because he's the closest to you, right?
Mhm.
No, no. I wanted to really, really land this dealer. Okay. And I still haven't. And it's been
Mhm.
4 years. But what I did was I sold suppressors in Alaska before I even
Oh
contacted
wow.
this guy. Okay, I've sold them in Maine and Florida and Texas and everywhere in the country. But this guy who is 3 miles from me, right? I held off on
Mhm.
contacting him,
Mhm.
okay,
Mhm.
intentionally, because I wanted to have my guns loaded. Okay, I
Mhm.
wanted to know all the objections. I wanted to know the pain points of, FFL dealers. I wanted to know the target audience before I got in front of that guy. Does
Mhm.
that make sense?
Yeah. No. Absolutely.
And
Which is
so,
interesting because you would think that you would go to that first guy to learn that for
of
information and then
course,
go to Alaska.
but that's silly. It's way easier to call someone and get a no than it is to walk into this guy who is my
Yeah,
local FFL dealer
because you got to
and
see
get
them
a
all the
no.
time, most likely, right?
Right. Well, because I want to be able to provide really great support for that guy,
Yeah.
right? I want to be able to do events and demos and just I could go to his shop today and sell suppressors right there in his shop for his business,
Mhm.
and that'd be awesome, right? But I can't do that without a relationship. And that's something
Mhm.
I'm still working in getting in front of this guy. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Mhm. Mhm.
It's very difficult sometimes
Yeah, I
because
mean, I can imagine how the challenges that present themselves with that, right? But the matter of fact that you did not allow that part to stop you from making the sales in other places. I mean, you're in multiple states from what you've described, right?
yeah,
That's
I've
that's
I've sold
awesome.
suppressors in almost every state.
Yeah.
Almost.
Okay.
Even
When you
in
say,
even in New York and
oh,
Illinois.
whew,
And
jeez,
California, actually.
man, New York is tough, man. I didn't even know you can sell in New York because so
The
I just moved out of New York. I'm originally
Yeah.
raised in Florida, but I lived in New York
Mhm.
for about 8-9 years, and then to Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania, you could get a suppressor. I got my can when I first moved out here, but now
Nice.
in New York, I mean, I thought you couldn't have it. It might be
You
confusing with New
cannot.
Jersey.
You cannot.
Yeah,
New York and New Jersey, you're not allowed as a private individual to own a suppressor at all. Okay,
that's
the ones
crazy.
that I sell
Yeah,
there are for law enforcement agencies or for dealers that
yeah.
are demoing for law enforcement agencies,
That's
right?
insane. To me, it's insane because I'm like, you guys are banning, have banned for purchase for people who can own firearms, a device that really protects your hearing. At least for me, it
Ex-
has, right? Um,
Exactly.
yeah, it's the most gnarly thing ever. But I can't be surprised at this one because New York and Jersey been up here for a while now. The tightness they have in their gun regulations up here is it's ridiculous. Man. Even with self
Yeah.
defense itself is ridiculous.
And it's so strange that their crime rates are not lower.
You know what I'm saying? It's like I purposely avoid. I don't live far from Camden, New Jersey, or Trenton, New Jersey. I
Mm,
purposely avoid those two areas because they're not very good areas whatsoever. Okay,
right.
even Philadelphia, I avoid as much as I can. Then in New York, I have family out there, so I go to New York once in a while. But when I go, it's to go to that place and get out. Okay, no, nothing else. I'm not looking. I'm not going to stop for a meal. No, I'm in and out. Okay, because I've lived
Right.
there for so many years and I've seen the crimes that happen there, and just me knowing that I got two kids and a wife that I need to protect with my life, and I'm in a state where if I do that, I'm gonna get in trouble for it, which blows my mind, right?
Right.
Um, and the crime rate is not getting any better, like you just stated. It's not any lower there than it is It's
Right.
wild.
That's weird. It's almost like those laws are just disarming law-abiding citizens, and the criminals still have guns.
Well, that's what it is. If you really put like thought to it, it's just like they just don't want us to have firearms. Because I always tell people, if you have a population that does not have firearms, you can do whatever you want, right? Because
Right?
they can't really stink back. But if you have a population that's heavily armed, I mean, I always joke around with my friends. I'm like, if we were to ever get invaded, it's what's crazy is like the hood alone will hold down the ground, right? Because there's so many firearms in circulation there, and we know they're not most of them are legal. However, they will think twice about hitting those neighborhoods because those people are just whacked out crazy as well, right?
Right.
Or if you go to like the suburban country areas, you don't want to go there neither because you're probably going to be down somewhat scope before you can enter anywhere near their home. So if you remove that aspect of a civilian, like just the way for them to defend yourselves, I mean, you can do whatever you want. To me, it's just pure control. Take away their
Right.
firearms, and we can make anything we want them to do. You know,
Sure.
um, I have friends. I have friends who are Cuban, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the issue that happened was about 2-3 years ago in Cuba, where they were protesting against their government. Man, all they had was stick and stones. You can't really do much with just stick and stones.
Right. Well, that's what we have right now.
Stick and
Our
stones.
our
Yeah,
government has drones and predators and freaking air assault. You
that
know
is
what I
true too.
mean?
Yeah,
Like we're vastly outgunned by our government,
I
right?
think I think it becomes more of like, one, do we think that if our government was to do something to turn their back on us completely, right? Like in a sense, to that degree, would people in the military themselves actually commit to that? I want to be optimistic and say no, right? But might be too optimistic. And second to that, I look at the whole issue that I've seen in the Ukrainian war, and man, it's scary with the drones. They just fly little drones over these trenches and just drop grenades on you. I'm like, oh fuck this. You don't have to worry
Right.
about the guy in front of you with a rifle. You have to worry about the little craft atop you is going to drop a bomb.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
so
And they weaponize them and turn them into like kamikaze drones also, right? Where they'll
yeah,
say, "Hey, this needs to go to this point," and then it explodes.
yeah,
So,
and this is
I
now we're talking
mean,
about Ukraine, who they don't have the technology the United States has. You know, all the full capabilities. So, like you said, like what we have is almost stick and stones compared to the type
yeah.
of
Well,
military that we face.
that's what our president said. He said, "Well, if you're gonna come at the government, you're gonna need an F-16s."
Yeah, yeah,
You know.
yeah. I mean,
And I mean,
yeah,
it's not untrue.
that's
Okay.
yeah,
When our founding fathers wrote the Second Amendment, they wrote it for muskets, right?
yeah.
And muskets were the weapon of war. And they were also the weapon that every civilian had in their home,
Hmm.
right? And so it was the exact same weapon.
Yeah,
And now here we are, and the government's allowed machine guns, and they're allowed grenades, and they're allowed all of these things that are isolated from the general population of the country.
we've been neutered.
Now, now that's kind of weird, right?
Yeah, of course. No, absolutely. I mean,
And I
yeah.
it's weird. It's almost like they think that the Second Amendment restricts the person rather than restricts the government.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's what I always try to tell people when it comes to the second and it's funny because like I got I'm Hispanic, so a lot of my family who's Hispanic who come up here, it's all unusual to them, or most of them. And
Mm,
when they're like, why you got so many firearms? I'm like, oh, just to protect myself from the government. And they look at me like sideways. I'm like, yeah, this is just it's supposed to be our security against the government becoming tyrannical and doing what these other countries do. Like I got
right.
I got friends who are Venezuelan. I mean, if you don't know the situation in Venezuela,
It's
and
not
you're like,
better than Cuba.
yeah,
You
I'm
know?
saying, I'm like, if you guys don't know what's going on in Cuba and Venezuela, definitely look at what's going on in Cuba and Venezuela, so you can see how good we have it here. It's insane. But yeah, no, I tell them that with all seriousness. I'm like, look, I don't look for problems. I don't ever want problems. I know there's people on both sides. They're always talking reckless, like we need a civil war, we need this. I don't want any of that, simply because I've never been to war, but there's enough footage online to tell that's not pretty. It's ugly. I've spoken to enough people to know it's not pretty. It's very ugly. Poverty,
Yeah.
sickness. I mean, everything you could think that's that's bad, it's involved in it. So we do not want that, right? However, I do have to be realistic that I cannot trust the people in power. Clearly, we have a president who doesn't know his first to last name. Um, and we just gotta be the providers for our own security at the end of the day, you know, at
Right.
the end of the day, who's gonna
Well, not
protect
just
families?
not just from the government either. I mean, it's from your
Well,
next door
even
neighbor
yeah,
also.
that
You know
too,
what I mean?
absolutely,
Like, you
you
need to
know,
be able to defend your home, right? You need to be
hundred
able to
percent,
freaking use a weapon for a lot more than just hunting,
a hundred
right?
percent, 100%,
Like, the
dude.
Second Amendment was not about hunting; it was about tyrannical government that they had
Hmm.
just got done overthrowing.
Exactly, and I feel like people need to be reminded of that because, like you just said, it's not only the government; it's the neighbor. Look, I lived in bad neighborhoods, and I could tell you, I grew up in with people who weren't the greatest of influence, and I could tell you that a lot of these people, if you were to pick up their shirt, they're gonna have something you most likely don't in these states you're not supposed to have, right?
Right.
And that's why I'm like, you have to, at the end of the day, your protection, the protection of your family is gonna come down to your responsibility, because somebody else you don't know might want to cause harm, and if they pull up anything to cause the harm, you can't defend yourself. Then what's next? What's this? We would be stacking. Yeah, okay. I'm glad you opened that door because then that's even further into the conversation. I always tell people, I'm like, consider what we're going on, not just with the Second Amendment, right? Consider what's going on and how much money we're giving overseas. And I'm not speaking just in Ukraine alone. I'm talking about just in general, right? How we're letting an invasion on in a border pretty much come into our country.
Right.
How they're neutering our gun rates, and the taxes are just getting fucking insane. So I'm like, by this time, our founding fathers, exactly like the patch said, we would have been stacking bodies by now. You know,
Yeah, they were pissed about a 3% T tax, right?
and we're being hit with some.
And now we're paying 40%.
It's insane, man. It's insane, and it's like, recently, I don't know if it went through. I haven't really been watching the news as much as I used to, but I know the president was talking about if you had a credit score under, I think it's under 650 or 700, they were going to decrease the interest rate for buying a home, right? But if your credit score is 750 and above, they will increase that for you. And I'm
Well,
like,
that doesn't make
I
sense.
was like, I
The
sat there,
people
I'm
with
like,
good
wait,
credit have a lower interest rate.
I'm sitting there. I'm like, so I'm making the right decisions. I'm doing what I need to be doing, and you're gonna penalize me from buying a home for people who are being irresponsible. Some of those people might change and they're fixing what they have the situation. Good, let them do that. They need to do that. But then when they do
Right.
better, you're gonna penalize them for doing better. I mean,
How about you
make it
just
make
lower
sense.
rates all over the place? That'd be great.
Right? Look, I think majority of us were okay with paying our fair share of taxes to help build what we have. But when you just start increasing, and then the money that you're taking is being justified by putting into places where it's like, what was it, gender studies and fucking, I think it was Pakistan or something like that.
Hmm.
Funding a war that we need to not worry about right now because we have issues at home, or funding illegals, man. Honestly, like, I have a lot of Latino family. I tell them, like, look, we shouldn't be funding them. They should go back home, and we need to fund what we have, like our veterans or the homeless children who barely have anything to eat because they're in a bad situation, whatever it is. It's insane,
Right.
dude. It's insane.
Well, we're funding countries that hate us also.
Yeah. I mean, come
You know?
on. Yeah, dude, if we were like, I'm asking, if we were in the situation some of these countries were in the next few years, you think any of them are going to come and help us? Nah, we're going to fend for ourselves.
Right.
It's insane. It's
Yeah.
insane, man. But
Little
let's
little
see.
rough.
Let's see what 2024 brings, because right now that's like my biggest hope to see the changes,
Sure.
the changes that might happen.
So I was watching one of your last shows with
Yeah.
Mike Perez.
Yeah.
Right. We kick brass, and that dude was just that's a powerful story. You know.
Oh, it was insane. It was insane, man.
Gosh.
Man, that
And one thing.
yeah.
One thing that like really stuck out to me was when he was talking about the Home Depot shirts, where he was selling,
Mm,
shirts at Home Depot and embroidering them and reselling them.
yeah.
And I'm like, huh, that's awesome.
Dude, it was
During
total genius. Yeah.
yeah, during those sales, he said that a no wasn't going to kill me,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that makes a lot of sense. A no is not going to kill you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I worked with this captain in the army who phrased it slightly differently. He would say path to yes,
Mm-hmm.
all right? And like he asked me one day, I had this printer, and he said, "Hey, can I print to that printer?" And it was a USB printer. Okay, he was on the Army's internet, which is
Mm-hmm.
isolated. And I said, "No, you can't print to that printer, but you could email it to me. I could print it off and then give it to you." And he says, "All right, path to yes. That's what I'm looking for." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was really interesting. It stuck with me, this whole path to yes thing. Like, how do you solve that problem? How do you solve anything for dealers and for whatever it is, whatever product it is or component or service?
Mm-hmm.
So it was
Yeah.
really interesting stuff.
No, that's huge. I mean, I love the way like did. If you guys listen to the podcast episode prior to the Home Depot shirts, the way it started is that he walked into a store and he overheard the manager and I guess it was the owner. We're talking about needing to print out new uniform shirts, and he saw the opportunity, and Mike said, "I'm going to grab the opportunity," and just say, "Hey, you're taking
You want
coke."
a quote?
And these guys are like, sure. And now, mind you, Mike did not. He had no clue whatsoever or anything. He just started asking questions, and they started giving them answers. Before you
You
know
even
it,
have a
he's like,
t-shirt business.
dude, it's crazy. Before you know it, now he's making. He was said upwards like six figures with the t-shirt business,
Yeah,
and whatnot. And it's insane. It started just by asking, right? Or
right.
like you were stating, the path to yes, right? Yeah, so it was
Pretty
insane.
interesting.
Yeah, man, it's awesome. If you guys haven't heard that pod, I definitely recommend going back to it because wow, man, I left there. I was like, I'm ready to work 10 times harder than I was already. It was insane. But let me ask you something else, man. So now we went into the whole topic of you going into from the military, into the industry with firearms selling. What's it? It's suppressors, all NFA items, right? Not just suppressors.
Yeah, GSL makes suppressors. We make only cans, only suppressors. Look at
I don't
this.
know if there's a website. Yeah, I was about to say I don't know if
Only
there's a website,
cans.
but somebody should have a website. Only
our,
cans.
our our website is gsltechnology.com
Yeah, yeah.
or gslsuppressors.com gets you there too.
It's crazy how much of an experience it is to shoot a suppressor. I was very hesitant to buy my first can at first. I'm like, does it really make a difference? Um,
Right.
but it
It's a
changes
huge
everything.
difference. Huge recoil, just everything about it. It's a
Yeah.
lot more fun.
Was that
So,
when you got into GSL? Was that your first time shooting off a can?
no, I'd shot a couple others. But I had never considered purchasing one myself. You know,
What was the determining factor for you?
uh, it made me an offer I couldn't refuse, like the mafia. I flew up to Michigan,
Yeah.
right? Met with my advisor up there. We went to their range. We shot all the different suppressors, and I'm like, all right, I got to figure out which one I want. And so
Mhm.
we shot several of them, and those were the two that had the most use case for my
Mhm.
weapons. All right, I've
Mhm.
got 9 mil pistols, PCCs, and so my first suppressor was one that could be used on pistols and on like AR 9s and
Oh wow.
Scorpions and
Okay.
MPX or whatever. And then I shot a lot of 223 also, so I wanted one of those dedicated can.
Mm.
A lot of people are like, get a 30 cal, shoot everything, and I wasn't shooting any 30 cal. You know what I mean? I'm like, there's
Yeah.
no reason. It's going to be a diminished value, right? I'll just get a dedicated one, and I'll be
Well,
fine.
how does that work? Because somebody told me. So my first can was a 5.56 can, right?
Hmm.
And when I went to this range event, someone there told me, "It's like you should just get the same thing. Get a 30 cal. You can shoot everything out of it." I'm like,
Yeah,
okay. And I was considering it because I do have a 30 cal that I want to get a suppressor for anyway. So I figured,
sure.
maybe I shouldn't do it. But you were mentioning like it diminishes value, right? It's how does that work?
Uh, because if you have a 30 cal suppressor,
Okay.
right, it has a 30 cal hole, and it's designed for that bullet.
Yeah.
Okay. and then you shoot a 223 through it. It's a whole lot smaller, and so the gas blows past the bullet and doesn't suppress, obviously, as well.
Ah,
Okay. Now, granted, it's not
mm,
a lot. Okay, it's not a lot, but it is significant to where if you're going to only shoot 5.56, there's no reason to get a 30 cal can. You
mm,
know,
mm,
our most popular selling can is a 30 cal multi cal shoot 5.56, 300 blackout, 300 win mag through. Um, but the guys that are the purists, right, and are
yeah,
doing dedicated builds, they're gonna get a 223 can. You know,
yeah,
we've got
yeah.
direct thread and quick disconnect
Mm,
223 dedicated cans.
mm, mm.
So
Yeah, so that's what they were telling me. I mean, get one that shoots 30 cal so you can shoot everything out of it. But I think what I'm gonna get next is probably a 9 mil. I got myself a PSA AKV. I don't know if you've heard of
nice.
those.
Of
Man,
course, I've shot them.
whew, those things are little beauties, man. I love it. I'm a little bit obsessed with it. I might
Yep.
say. So throw a can on there
I've
soon, hopefully.
I've got a video
Yeah.
of the PSA AKV shooting one of our suppressors. I'll send you.
Did it have
But
the AOG trigger on it?
I have no idea. No idea, but I'll
Yeah.
grab it for you. That'll be cool.
Yeah, I gotta watch that, man, because I know that
Mm.
I'm dying to find somewhere where I am allowed to shoot the AOG trigger. It shoots really
Mm-hmm.
fast. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the footage of it with that trigger, how fast it shoots. It's almost like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's insane, man. It's lovely.
I've got some pretty fast triggers here myself.
Yeah, man. I saw the video, so I'm just like, oh, damn, dude, this is awesome, man. You know that's one
Mm.
thing I have to before the year ends. I have to find someone who has fast triggers, and I just gotta let a mag go just to see get that
Yep.
feeling, get that adrenaline.
Well, if you ever make it to Augusta, Georgia, you can stop by here and
I might just
shoot at my range.
I might just drive down there for that. You know, it's insane. I mean, the amount of stuff that people can have too. So the same guys that was mentioned earlier that did the event, they're doing the DT event before. They had like it was like a rocket launcher, man. It was insane. I'm like, yo, dude, I wish I would have gone there. Um, and then I seen people with tanks and all this other crazy stuff. Let me see if I can find that.
Why not, right?
I mean, yo, let me tell you, man. If I could or when I could, I'll be that type of guy who shows up at home and be like, "Honey, I'm home." Okay, where'd you come from? Came from the store, and I came from with a nice new vehicle, my new car.
I parked my new gun in the garage.
What's hilarious about that? I think Mike actually posted something recently, similar to that. You know, I got a new vehicle, and it was like a whole tank right behind him. I'm like, geez,
Mm,
dude. Oh man, he doesn't have the photo on here no more. So yeah, no, this guy was just shot a full on rocket. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, this is cool, man. I just need to get more involved in this world because the amount of crap that's out there is fucking dope,
yeah,
dude.
it's good fun. When you're a manufacturer, when you're a an FFL dealer manufacturer, there's a
Mm.
lot of really cool toys you can play with.
Yeah, yeah, no, no doubt, no doubt. Now let me ask you something else. So you've become the top from whatever you wrote to us, right? You became this top dealer for GSL, correct?
Yes,
Now,
I'm their top salesman for the company for the
okay.
last couple of years. Yeah.
Now that's not an easy task, right? So that's something that's going to come with a lot of challenges and stuff there, right? What were some
Yeah.
of the challenges you felt there that you faced, and then what did you do to overcome that? Do you have any like tips that you utilize that you can share with listeners to overcome those same
I I
challenges?
definitely do. Yeah. I mean, I was still working full time in a systems engineering role with the DoD when I
Mm,
first started with GSL.
mm,
And so I was doing that 40 hours a week, 9 to 5, sitting at a desk. And it was challenging because it's very difficult to work with FFLs and
mm,
dealers and customers and travel and do all of those things. There were times where I took off work to go to a suppressed shooting event. I took vacation time to go to SHOT Show. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And so I had to balance that.
Mm,
And what I would often do is I would get a list together of all of the companies and the law enforcement agencies that I wanted to really reach out to. And
yeah.
I'd get their contact info and their phone number and who that person was that was the decision maker. And then at lunchtime, I'd go out to my car and I'd have my little, you know, my little meals ready to go, and I'd be eating and on the phone at the same time, right?
Mm.
And I'd throw that food down, and then I still had 45 minutes of lunch, of my lunch break, and so I'd be calling dealers, all around the country.
Yeah.
And so all of these dealers saw this major spike of calls, between 11 and 12 or 12 and 1 or whatever. And then I'd go back in and I'd turn the hamster wheel at the DoD. And at 4 p.m., I would get out and I'd be calling dealers all evening, 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m.
Mm.
And I leveraged something really interesting as far as time differential. Okay. Because at 5 p.m. Eastern, what time is it in Washington State or Alaska? You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Because you got,
noon in Alaska.
yeah, right. You're
And
like
so,
3 hours behind or some sorts.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Alaska's, -4, -5. And so I was able to use that time differential to like really be a major asset. So
Mm.
my first several dealers were in Oregon and Washington and Alaska and Idaho and Montana,
Mm.
right? Because I was calling them at 5 p.m., 6 p.m. Eastern,
Mm.
and they were still in business, of course,
Mm.
right?
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just
That's
fascinating.
consistency, man. No, that's you see, when it comes to these things, like I feel like people don't understand. Earlier you alluded to what Mike said. A no won't kill you, right? And it amazes me because I was one of those too. That a no felt, it's like a no was like the worst thing ever. You got to know, you're like,
Sure.
I'm done. I'm done. I'm not. This is not for me. When you got to know, but the reality is that when you get your mind outside of that, realize that this is not, anything you do is not going to be for everyone, right?
Of course
But
not.
what's going to
Of course not.
matter,
And you're going to get
yeah,
no's in anything. You could go
exactly,
out into the
100%.
street right now with a stack of $100 bills and say, "Would you like 100?" And someone is going to tell you no.
Are you going to be offended and stuff? I mean, I'll probably step just to save the 100, but no, but it's true. You know what I'm saying? There's always going to be people telling you no, who are going to dismiss you. There's even going to be people who are going to be rude to you, man. Just for whatever fucking reason, right? So, but
Right.
when you persist through those and go for those, or yeses, those who you could build those work relationships with, that's when you really grow. That's when you really, you reach goals, because now you're reaching the people who, whatever you have, you're providing them with what they need, right?
Right. Well, one of my coworkers put it really, really well one time.
Mm.
Actually, it wasn't a coworker. He was with a firearms manufacturer. We were riding around in Phoenix recently for CanCon,
Yeah.
right? And we got on this subject of, objections and whatever. And he said, you know, we're not selling insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're not selling light bulbs. Okay. We are selling a product that these guys are selling, right? They're already selling suppressors, they're already selling firearms.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not like we're not bringing them something that they're not already working with, right?
Yeah.
So, and he would say that often. He'd be like, "We're not selling insurance, Kevin." I'm like, "You're freaking right." We have a really valuable product. And so conveying that value is sales. Here it is. This is what we have to offer you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 I mean, yeah, you're not selling insurance.
Right. And
Yeah.
so therefore, like, it just seems like there's a lot of dealers that set up gatekeepers, you
Mm-hmm.
know? If I call a dealer and I say, "Who does your suppressor purchasing?" And they say, "Well, that's Jim." Okay, cool. Jim's not available. He won't be here. He's here every other Tuesday from 1 p.m. to 1:05 p.m. only,
Mm-hmm.
rotating. Well, you know what I mean? Like he's just never there. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's like an instance of getting past objections, right? There are gatekeepers in place
Mm-hmm.
to stop terrible freaking deals from awesome companies, all because, of the way the firearms industry is. Right? There's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of like distributors, right? There's a lot of buy-ins and stocking requirements, and there's a lot of things that companies put on dealers to like force them to stock their products,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's a huge deal. And companies get really scared about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, GSL has no buy-in and no stocking requirement, and so it's a whole lot easier to convey that once I can get to the right person, you
Yeah.
know?
You just got, it's just maneuvering through the objections and maneuvering through those gatekeepers, because that's every industry, every business. For the field I'm in, we do a lot of like cold messaging, and there's gatekeepers every way, every day, right?
Right.
And that's because they get blown up with hundreds of messages from other people who are probably trying to promote the same thing or sell the same thing. You just got to find
Mhm.
a way. Okay, how can I bring the most value to them, and convey that message to them so they see that value, and then ultimately gets me to the person I need to speak to, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so well, until you understand this, and it takes a lot of trial and error to get there. It's going to be a lot of, hey, what you're saying makes no sense, or it's terrible, or it's great but I don't know, or whatever it is. You're going to get all kinds of objections, right? But maneuvering through those objections and getting creative with the way you approach these individuals, that will really get you through. I mean, you've made top sales with GSL, so you, out of all people, know that. You
Yep.
face your objections and you're just like, all right, well, that doesn't stop me. I'm going to continue on. If anything, I'll change my strategy, right?
Mhm.
Hmm.
It's interesting. I mean, people respond differently as well, right?
Yeah.
They respond differently to, you know, motivation or whatever. I remember another one of the sales guys contacted a dealer who I had contacted, 6 months ago,
Hmm.
and they said, "Hey, that guy, he was so arrogant."
Mm.
And I'm like, "Huh, damn," you know. And he said, he wasn't listening. And I think sometimes maybe what it is that it's like confidence is perceived as arrogance, maybe.
Mm. Hmm.
I'm confident in our product line because I live it and breathe it, and I've also compared it to other offerings in our market,
Hmm.
right? And when I can present the facts and say, "Hey, here's this one," you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very clear. And yeah, that was his impression though. And I'm like,
Hmm.
dang, you know,
But you
you're
didn't
just
let it stop you. You learned from it.
it's fine.
Yeah,
It's
you
fine.
learn from it. You learn from it, and you continue on. That's what you did. Because there's always
Right.
somebody's going to say some shit about someone.
Of course.
That's
Of
that's
course.
one thing you can't avoid, and no matter what the industry you're in, can't avoid that. That's just gonna happen. Somebody's gonna say, this guy was too friendly. I don't trust him. He's weird." You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, you'll
Right.
hear all the craziest things out there, right? But again, it's about not being discouraged by the ones who tell you no or reject. It's about finding the ones that are willing to listen, and ultimately will see the value in the product.
Right.
It's strange for me, because for me, like, I take it from a biblical standpoint in a way, right? So, guys, don't punish me if I botch this up, right? But when Jesus has sent out disciples out there. I remember, I forget who exactly it was. They went out to a village and they went to preach and got turned away, right? And got turned away pretty bad. So they went back to Jesus and they were like, "Well, should we pray that fire rains upon them?" Like, damn, man, that's a little bit much. And what was the response? Just wipe the dust off your feet and go on to those who want to listen. And that
Hmm.
same principle there, I've taken to almost everything, right? It's like, people reject you, just wipe off the dust off your feet and go to the next ones, and go to the ones who are willing to listen, because those are the ones who
Right.
want to communicate to. Because those who don't want to listen, they're just not going to listen, right?
Sure.
You can't just force them to be like, buy this now, or it's over, or whatever.
Right. Well, what if you just walked in with a business card and said, "Here you go, contact me," and then left? you know, would that be worse?
I'm pretty sure. Right. I'm pretty sure that business card is going to be in the trash.
It probably wouldn't work out well,
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's why I was mentioning earlier that guy that's, very close to me.
Hmm.
I am mind blown that I haven't been able to really connect with him. You know what
Hmm.
I mean?
Yeah.
It
Do you
just it bothers me.
Well, do you find yourself at a point where you're gonna come, like, you make that mental commitment? It's like, you know what? Before this time period, I'm gonna go over there and do this. I
Yeah.
mean, look, top sales in GSL, done this for a while. At this point, I would feel like, I mean, I don't know nothing about the gun shop, but I would
Mm,
say at this point, it's like, hey, whatever. Let me go see what happens. You know?
sure. Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of it's, a very close knit. I mean, it's a lot of brand loyalty, I guess. Like, hey, we've always done this.
Yeah.
We've always been with this company, so we're gonna keep going with this company. And I don't know. I've done everything except send them a couple free suppressors to say, hey, as soon as you sell these, then just send me a check.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy. It's like
You know?
it's funny that you say that because like I can see this industry. I mean, being around some people in the industry, I hear things here and there, and I could see brand loyalty being a big part of the industry, right?
Right.
Um, and just based off the stuff that I've seen, which can present a challenge on there, but regardless of the point, right? Just because there's a challenge doesn't mean you don't go ahead and do something. I think about it myself. I feel like I don't know if it's maybe the older school people who are more tight knit with the brand loyalty. Because I see like a lot of newer like gun shops open up, and they just seem to carry about everything. If it's a good product, they just throw it on their shelves. Um, and that's just what I've seen.
Right.
Yeah.
Very interesting stuff, though. But one day I'm gonna break the seal. I don't know what I got to do. I'm probably gonna coordinate like a demo day, a range day, and invite him to it again. You know?
Well, take them out to shoot some of those things you got up there. You know what I'm saying? A lot of the
Right.
Browns and be like, you see, sweet, right? Yeah, put it on your shelves. They're sweeted up there,
Right. All right.
So that would be awesome. But Kevin, I want to ask you one more thing. Okay.
Sure.
Now, in this podcast, my goal is to be able to empower and help men. So we were able to share some tips that men can really utilize into building whatever it is they're building. Because all in the end of the day, sales is sales. Objections are going to happen regardless where you're going. Challenges are going to present themselves regardless of the path that you take. Right. So that's
Yeah.
just something you're never going to be able to avoid. Okay. Now, when it comes to mental toughness, that mental toughness, often comes from a place of deep understanding and acceptance of oneself, right? What's one thing you wish people understood about the work you do at GSL Technologies, that's really helped you develop a really strong mindset, like that mental toughness?
Um, we're not selling insurance, right?
Yeah.
Uh, meaning that we have an applicable product, right?
Mhm.
I how do I develop the mental toughness? I getting into this sales role, I did a lot of research, right? I did a lot of YouTube and a lot of Spotify, and I've listened
Mhm.
to a lot of podcasts, and I'm constantly learning,
Yeah.
constantly growing. And based on that recommendation for Alex Ormozy, I started listening to some of his stuff. Right, he had this really interesting section about his $1 million morning, right?
Yeah.
Where he just has a
I think I've
coffee
seen that one.
and
Yeah.
goes to work. That's his morning routine, is have a coffee and go to work. And so I think having confidence, right? Having a quality product that you can get behind and learning about it, right? I've
Yeah.
committed a lot of time to learning all the specs and stats and length and diameter and all that stuff
Mm.
because it's important and it comes up. And presenting yourself as the expert in that
Mm.
industry, right? I published documents on the 10 most common suppressor myths,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
things that suppressors do, and just put out quality content, provided value to dealers that is unmatched in a lot of what they see in this industry.
It's
And
great.
so
Yeah.
there's that.
No, it's crazy that you say that because it's very true. When you have you know, to build confidence, it takes a lot of learning, and a lot of research, and a lot of getting to know a product yourself, right? You can't. If I was to just grab a GSL suppressor, just throw it on my gun and just try to sell it like that, I'm not going to get very far, right? But if I understand the technology behind it, I really have like a lot of experience with it itself, and just become a geek about the whole entire can industry myself. I'm going to be able to sell so much more because there's that sense of confidence now. I've become an expert in the field, right? And what
Mm-hmm.
people need to be remembered is that when you start out, most likely you're not an expert in the field. Like when I started out doing what I do, or even starting out here in podcasting, man, I'm not an expert in the field. I'm learning. I'm doing my research every day, every morning. Just like Alex Hormozy. I just get up, get my coffee. The only extra step I have is that I take care of my kids in the morning, make sure they're okay, and then get right to it. Learning
Oh,
every single
nice.
thing I need to learn, from naming, thumbnails, editing, the stuff that you need, all that stuff. Every day is an ongoing lesson. Um, so when you have that, you're going to have that confidence. So mental toughness as well, based on what you were saying, would be something where it's like, not allowing the lack of knowledge discourage you, but utilizing as an opportunity to learn on a product or service or whatever you guys are doing. Use that as an opportunity to learn about it and becoming the expert on what you're stating.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I want to say, one, Kevin, thank you for coming on here. I'm excited. Um, if I'm ever in Georgia, I'm gonna hit you up because I definitely want to shoot some machine guns.
Stop by anytime.
So I'm definitely looking
Anytime. I
forward
got
to
an
that.
open-ended invitation for you.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate. You were mentioning you got a range too. I'm like, oh, that's gotta be
I
lovely,
do.
man.
I've got a range in my backyard about 150 feet away.
Man, that's lovely. I'll tell you what, man. If I had a range in my backyard, my wife would probably just would want me missing because the amount of noise I would make every morning. I'm an early bird, you know,
Hmm.
so I'll probably be up there 6 in the morning, bah, 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 and it'll be her alarm clock, So
But if you
dangerous
were
thing for me.
shooting suppressors only,
Oh yeah, well, there you go. You see, if I was shooting cans only, then
you'd be
that's
good to
a,
go.
that's a different story. So you just gave me a cheat code for me to shoot at 6 in the morning when I have my own
Right.
backyard range.
My leaf blower is
Yeah,
louder than some of the suppressors.
man, it's crazy. So my 5.56 can, when I was shooting it indoors, it was. I mean, it was definitely a lot quieter than it would be without shooting a can. However, it was still pretty quite loud. So I'm like, okay, this is my first time in cans. This is my first like year and a half in the gun world. So I'm getting
Right.
familiar with all this new stuff. I'm like, all right, it's still kind of loud for a can on there. Um, so it kind of told me. But when I shot it outdoors, man, it was like a little puffer, man. It's like poof, poof, poof.
Yep.
And I'm like, whoa, that's a lot quieter now that I'm out here. Jeez, I love
Sure.
this. Yeah.
I absolutely hate shooting indoors, right? Unless I
Yeah.
absolutely have to. If I'm in like downtown Philadelphia, I'll go shoot indoors. But man, I feel like outdoors is a very different experience because there's not the reverberation, the echo,
Everything.
the steel plate that you're
Yeah.
hitting in the back is gonna.
You know what? Like, I love the range I used to go to that was indours because the people there were great. Um,
Mm,
the challenge that present, I just got tired of shooting indoors. So I found a range that was about 15 minutes away from me, about 40 minutes from Philadelphia. If somebody lives in Philadelphia. Uh, Long process. It's a gun club, so it's a long process to get into the club itself. It took me like almost a
mm,
year just to get in. But now that I'm in there, man, I'm shooting outside. It's like I don't ever want to shoot inside. Like, to me, shooting inside is just, it's boring and it's loud. You know?
sure.
Yeah. So I'm spoiled now. I'm always gonna be an outdoor shooter. But
Nice.
guys,
Well, cool,
that
man.
wraps up for today. Kevin, thank you for coming on again, man. It was
Thank
exciting
you so
speaking
much
to
for this
you.
opportunity.
Yeah, I
I really
appreciate it,
appreciate your
man.
time.
And I gotta say, I love all the patches you have out there. I see one in particular that caught my eye, and that is Biden's number one quote in the gun community, and that's the AFT. Or I see another one there when he called the
Yeah.
ATF the AFT. I will never forget that day. So I keep looking at that patch, wanting to die, laughing, thinking about that day I heard that.
I got some pretty cool ones.
Yeah, I
Some
see,
pretty
man.
cool
It's
patches.
pretty cool stuff there.
I like this little guy.
Is that like a overweight Bugs Bunny? With carrot, that's awesome, dude. You got Pillsbury Doughboy. You
Oh
got like a
yeah.
whole variety of patches out there. That's
There's
fucking
some pretty
awesome.
cool stuff out there.
Yeah,
This
which is
one's
nice.
a duality.
Oh, okay.
John
Red
Wick.
bullet, blue bullet. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
And
you know
so it's
what?
like Matrix and John Wick together.
Yeah, but you know which one I want to see before we close out is that the one that you were pointing at earlier, Joe Biden one? Come on,
It might
let's go.
possibly be a forbidden popsicle.
You know what? I wouldn't even put it past me for him to really do some shit like that. That's the special part about that patch. Whoever created that was a fucking genius. That's for sure. But all right,
Oh
guys,
yeah.
thank you so much. And Kevin, again, thanks a lot, man.
Oh yeah. Have an awesome day. Thank you so much.